All right. Good morning, afternoon. It's me, Smirk, going over the final changes for Age 116. Um, this is going to be brief. Real life has been a little hectic, so I'm going to try to make it as quick as I can. From a Changes Council perspective, there wasn't a whole lot in mind besides like really considering what a lot of people said. I think mostly Benji and Revival uh, took care of this with um, reviewing what the community has been saying. So hopefully we landed on something that people are looking forward to. Um, there's as like kind of a table of contents, I'm going to go through some keynotes about overall stuff. Um, I wrote down the attack speeds available this age, as well as the military strengths of different races, as well as the UB potentials of each race. um, for personalities, if you're looking for pure offense. And then, my favorite part is coming up with different compositions for kingdoms. Um, they're not necessarily like what's intended to be like the best, but more just kind of like with a theme in mind or for fun. So, um, this probably won't be quite as comprehensive as previous ones, but anyway, without further ado. So let's look at these for the keynotes that I wanted to point out, just going in order. Core mechanics and system changes, the war doctrines. So it looks like now for the first province is, I don't know if you can see that I'm highlighting something, but the first province is 2% and each additional is only 1%. Basically, what this means is now you need 12 provinces of a race to reach the maximum, with 11 provinces reaching your 12%. So I would recommend probably just going 11 provinces. So 11, hold on, did I add that right? Actually, I think it's 10 provinces, right? The first one is 2, plus 9 is 11. Hold on. 2 plus 9 is 11. 2 plus 10 is 12. Yeah, no, that's correct. Okay, so 11 provinces gives you 12%, and 12 provinces will give you that extra 0.5. So I recommend 11 provinces if you're trying to max out or get close to max. Um, and then for for the elves, fairies, and halflings, their doctrines go up faster, so you don't need as many of them. So for them, you only need 6 provinces to reach the 12% of whatever their doctrine is, or 7 to get that additional 0.5. So with that in mind, all right, yeah, so that's the doctrines changes. So the thing about relations and hostility now, very interesting changes there. Unfriendly unlocks these operations, which is quite different. Gives you a lot more power before a war starts to use some ops, like particularly meteor showers and fool's gold and lightning strike to like really start hammering away at resources, um, as well as night strike and greater arson. Um, There was some talk about it. I don't know if I saw it in the revised changes. Maybe that's not a thing anymore. But going to war upon reaching unfriendly. So I'm not sure. I don't see it right now. So definitely review it just to make sure. Watch hours, a little bit of a buff there for the catch chance. A couple more science multipliers being raised. So last stage there was, I think, finesse, uh, the one that lowers losses, resilience, I think, and artisan all got their multipliers increased. So if you noticed, those this age were a little bit more challenging to reach higher numbers. This age looks like shielding is going up, so it's a little more difficulty, and valor as well. But cunning and sorcery are being combined into just one called arcana. So that's kind of nice because those two being separate made it really challenging to increase. So having those consolidated to one, I think, is a good call there. Some generic spells that got buffed mildly: Fireball from 4 to 5 at the bottom level, so 5 to 7% instead of 4 to 7%. Storms do a little bit more. Droughts do a little bit more. Chastity and Sloth durations got nerfed a bit more, and Magic Ward. Um, so you know they were already kind of short durations, but like it kind of buffs the races that can increase the duration of those, like Elf this age, right? So something to keep in mind if you plan to use those spells. Um, and oh, Lightning Strike is no longer global access, so you have to pick a race or personality that has access to Lightning Strike. Um, yeah, not much, just a little bit of buffs overall, except for those 3 duration spells. Um, Mainly, though, Magic Ward has been re-added this age. It's been out of the picture for the last few ages. So something to consider when you're wanting to run compositions. Um, Thievery, riots increased, bribe thieves, free prisoners, rob the vaults. A lot of things buffed here on thievery, just mildly. I wouldn't say any of these things are very, like OP or anything like that, but and then a new thing for in war, learns and plunders now also capture land equal to 20% of the acres a trad march would have gained. Um, for the most part, this doesn't really change a lot of what's happening in war, as like you wouldn't want to plunder chain somebody because you're taking some acres. That's too weak to be able to chain somebody properly, or learn chain them or something like that. But it can add a few like niche circumstances where maybe you want to consider, like, like say you've been shelling a province and doing massacres on that province. um Now you can also add in some learns and take a few acres as well, right? um so somebody that, it's an attack that doesn't give you that many acres, but also does something else. So massacre peasant damage increased by another 5%. um I think massacre was nerfed from 3x to 2x, I think a couple ages back, or was it this last age? And it's been going all right. I still see plenty of massacres happening in war, at least the wars I've been in, and so this, is aimed to do a little more damage to the peasants. So I guess the peasants felt like it was not enough, but the thief and wizard damage is unchanged. So still a really good option to use. Let's see. Relations and hostility, meter decay. You can read through all of that yourself for ceasefire, stuff like that. Dragons overall looks like they have been mostly buffed. I don't remember if it was, I think it was 30% last age, so up to 40% for these on Amethyst. And then killing 5% wizards and thieves every 6 ticks is definitely a buff. I think that's appropriate. I think Amethyst was Emerald, a little bit of a buff as well for the instant effect and the 6 ticks effects. Same thing for Ruby. I don't know if this was 12.5 last age. Topaz looks unchanged. Sapphire looks unchanged. So I think all the dragons are good, are a good option. Dragons started outside of war cost 15% more gold and food. That's kind of nice, right? Like a lot of times you save up the stuff to fund the dragon pre-war and then in war. So essentially, like it's a very, 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 very minor buff to kingdoms that are good at funding dragons while in war. So if you're playing, with banks or something, or an econ kingdom that likes to fund dragons, this can be viewed as like a small, very tiny buff to kingdoms like that. Okay, I'm not going to go through each and every single race and personality. You can, look at that yourself. But some things that I like to do is, for each race, I like to add up, you know, like their strongest offensive power to their strongest defensive power, um, including horses, to give you a rough military strength, is what I call it, number. Now, this applies to those that attack, obviously, because if you're just playing defense, then it doesn't matter how much offense your units have, right? But like, um, so, you know, an avian, for example, 16 plus 10 would have a military strength of 26, compared to a dark elf who has 16 plus 2 from the horses. So that's 18 plus 12 on the defensive unit gives them 30. So a dark elf has a lot more military strength than an avian does, right? That doesn't mean that the dark elf is better or whatever. It just means that you can get more military numbers per population than an avian could, right? That doesn't mean you should discount the avian, because avian have, you know, incredibly fast attack times, you know, training time, you know, all that stuff, and their doctrines and yada yada yada. So, you know, this is just raw numbers per population is the way to look at it, I guess. So with that said, dark elf, human, and orc this age all have a military strength of 30, which is the strongest, give or take, because when you look at Dryad has 29, but they also have plus 12.5% defensive military efficiency. Now you might be like, oh, well, that's just defensive military. Yeah, but like that means you can run less defense to get more offense, right? So I would actually make the claim that the 12.5% on Dryad actually makes them stronger militarily than the dark elf, human, and orc. So after those four, then you have elf at 29, undead and fairy at 28, dwarf at 27, and then lastly avian and halfling at 26. For the purposes of unbreakables, UBs, your fairies are still your best option for trying to reach unbreakable with their 16 power defense on their elites. And then you have a tie with elf and halfling at 13. Reminder that elf, that's with their defensive specialists, so it's a lot easier for them to train, whereas halfling is with their elites. Then you have humans and dark elves both at 12 defense, also with specialists. Dryads at 11, again reminding you that they have a plus 12.5% defensive military efficiency, which probably puts them above the human and dark elf, but may or may not quite as tanky as elves or halflings. And then you have lastly avian, dwarf, orc, and undead, all at 10. When you're looking at personalities, purely for the sake of offense, the top 5 are warrior. I mean, warrior is obvious and a dead giveaway because, you know, plus 15% OME is absolutely hard to compete, in addition to the prisoner warrior strength or mercenary prisoner strength and their tactic science. Like, so absolutely hard to challenge a warrior in terms of pure offense. So they take number 1. After that, I would say it would be the general. In addition to plus 2 to elite strength, they also have an additional general, and 25% military science efficiency overall. So very strong option for pure offensive power. Then you have war hero. War hero is a little bit tricky because they get offense specialist increase, right? So you want to pair it with those that have strong specialists already to kind of make it work in favor of like maximizing your offense, if that's what you're going for, right? There's other uses for that, but so war hero would come in then. After that, I would say it would be necromancer. One of the changes to necromancer this age is they not only was the 5% increase to 7.5, but it's not just OME, it's all military efficiency. So that's actually really pretty strong if you're playing on a race that already has like honestly, it's really tempting to like recommend a dryad necromancer just to get the highest military you can get. But yeah, so something to consider there with necromancer. And then lastly, cleric, the +1 defense on their specialists and elites. You know, obviously can translate to offense. It means you can run less defense to get more offense. You know, less defensive units to for the same value, basically. So those are your top five if you want just like pure offense, in my opinion. And last but not least, I'm going to go through the kingdom compositions that seem fun. And oh my God, I toyed with this so much because I was like, I really want to do Dryad Necromancers for the military efficiency stacking. And a Dryad Necromancer has other really useful stacks as well. Like Dryads have clear sight, Necromancers have the bonus wizards per acre, as well as yeah, I don't know, it's just it's kind of neat, but ultimately I ended up going with um Dryad Clerics. You know what, let's change it back. Okay, so this composition is called Impregnable. um and so here, let me tell you, and you can switch this how you want, but the composition is 11 dryads, 6 fairies, and 6 elves, and then plus 2 of whatever. So your 11 dryads, clerics or necromancers, your 6 fairies, clerics or necromancers, and then you have 6 elf mystics just to like for coverage. This is a really tanky composition with the dryad war doctrine having further increased defense military efficiency. You know, fairies having your strongest defense, pairing them with your cleric, they have a 17-point defensive elite, right? Or if you pair them with necromancer, they get an additional plus 7.5% military efficiency overall. So I would still say probably dryad necromancers and fairy clerics, just because it kind of fits a little bit better. But you know, there's issues there too because cleric has like revelation, so you can give your revelation and fountain of knowledge to your dryads because fairies already have it, yada yada. But that's essentially the list there. Now, it'd be a little challenging to run this composition. You know, super defensive. You know, you're gonna find people that can break you. Obviously, you're not gonna be UB, but you're playing a high defense composition. So could be fun to try out. Not gonna vouch for it being great or anything like that, but it absolutely could be fun to try out. Okay, then you have Moneybags composition. This is 11 human generals, 11 dwarf artisans, and 4 halfling mystics. So the thought there, humans already have like incredible economy, right? This age they have plus 30% income, reduced training costs, you know, faster draft speed. They get extra credits and reduce training costs to your whole kingdom. And then when they attack, they also get extra specialist credits and building credits and training time reduction and all sorts of fun stuff, right? They have increased wages, but meh. As a general, they also get further reduced training costs and speed. So you're looking at like really, really, really cheap training, right? Like minus 50% training or whatever it is. Like everything costs half, right? Now, in a war, a lot of times you're mostly using credits. But think about this, right? It makes a human general really good at massacres or, you know, non-traditional march attacks because like oftentimes, you know, like you're doing massacres or whatever and you don't get credits for that, right? But with your training costs being so cheap and you having extra econ as a whole anyway, now you're looking at needing to train your troops, right? So having, you know, drafting and training all cheapened and faster, human generals make a lot of sense and they have a really good synergy. Plus the military science efficiency overall, you know, you can put that into heroism for faster drafting, valor for faster training time, and so on and so forth. Um, a really good match, I think there. Um, and then your dwarf artisans, I mean, that's just obvious, right? The building capacity with the building efficiency, immune to greed, riots, and fool's gold, bonus econ science. Um, yeah, so I think the human and dwarf combo, human generals, dwarf artisans, and then you have your halfling mystics. Okay, a little strange, but halfling has Tree of Gold, right? Just like they also get the a greater protection, but whatever. Um, so as a mystic, you know, they have the extra mana, the extra bonuses that mystics get, but they can easily switch from being your like meteor showers, pitfalls, chastity, all that fun stuff, and they can immediately switch over to just econ, like Tree of Gold, talk, right? If they need to. So all 25 of your provinces would be absolute threats with econ, meaning that, like a lot of times when you're thinking up a strategy to go up against the kingdom, you're like, okay, let's nullify these like 10 provinces because they're econ provinces or whatever. But when all 25 of them are threats, that makes it much more difficult to deal with. What that means is this kingdom, this Moneybags kingdom with the 11 doors and 11 humans and yada yada, they are like, you can pump out dragons and you can just start spamming dragons much more easily and faster than your typical kingdom. Um, so not something to be trifled with. Their military numbers might not be quite as amazing as, some of your more standard stuff, but like when you're just spamming dragons at somebody, that's really hard to compete with. All right, then you have speed composition, right? This one, I didn't care too much about the doctrines. I just said, you know what? 19 avian tacticians, and just go, right? Oh, I forgot to talk about attack speeds. This is a great time. So, an avian in war, I'm going to talk about just the attack times in war. As you all know, attack time in war is about 11.9 hours. So, I just used that as the baseline. An avian by itself, without the doctrine or tactician considered, reduced to 8.9, right? So your 9-hour attack time. An avian tactician, 7.7-hour attack time. Or sorry, that's an avian if you have maxed out doctrines, which I think they max out at 10%. So yeah, avian tactician, 7.14, and an avian tactician with maxed out doctrines, 6.18. Like, okay, that's about half of the attack time as a standard attack time. So if you're running 19 avian attack times, you're attacking twice as fast. You're getting, twice as many waves as your opponent that isn't running any kind of speed, right? Now, I didn't even like throw in the possibility of adding the haste ritual into that. So you can get sub 6-hour attack times with avian tacticians and haste, and that's not even considering barracks. So yeah, very, very scary to fight a kingdom like that. So for the TMs, I did 3 halfling rogues and 3 elf mystics, standard stuff, just something to do. They can get it done where, most races will struggle. Like a halfling rogue is going to be your best thief, and an elf mystic is going to be your best mage, right? So they'll get it done. And then you just have 19 unstoppable, like super fast attackers. Then you have on the flip side of that, you have your power composition, right? Now, this doesn't worry as much about the attack speed and is focused more on just maximizing attack power. So for that one, I went with 11 orc warriors, right? The doctrine from orc giving you even more OME. 11 human war heroes, humans with their 15-point O specs, going up to 17 from the war hero bonus, going up to 20 with the 3-point horses. So very, very strong offense there. And then you have your orc warriors, which is just undeniably the strongest possible offense you can get. And then you have 3 fairy mystics just to kind of augment, right? But you're just looking at full hammer mode, big, big, big offense numbers there. Then I have a sustained composition. Again, not as concerned about the doctrines themselves, but 19 undead generals. Undead are already extremely high sustain, right? They have really low losses. And who gives a crap if they can't build hospitals? Like, this is basically no penalty for an undead, right? Because they already have minus 45% military losses. They have the plague and they're immune to plague and they don't require food. So, like, okay, you just have a lot of extra building space. You can't build hospitals, can't build, I mean, you can build farms, but you don't need to. So incredible choice. Like, they may look a little weak on the numbers, but they're not weak. They're very, very strong. Now, when you add them to general, on top of an additional general, their elites are +2 strength. They have faster speed training and cheaper training, and their credits can train elites with the military efficiency. And they have Mist and Wrath. Like, uh, undead generals are extremely extremely high sustain. So if you're trying to play like a longer war with high sustain, this is the way you go. And with that, I would say you would want to augment with fairies. um, I put down three fairy mystics and three halfling heretics, but honestly, I'm thinking three fairy mystics and three fairy heretics would probably be better. Um, yeah, so just 19 undead, six fairies, three of them mystics, three of them heretics. You don't even need rogues, just go heretics. Um, and just wreck face. Like you will, like you might like not quite do a whole lot right away at the very beginning, but like to bring down this composition is absolutely a, like if you survive into 48 hours, I think after that there's you just keep, you just can't die. Like you, um so very scary to play against a kingdom like that as well. Then I'm gonna say this last one, which I didn't really make as a composition, but I think is gonna be the majority, like, or the standard, like Warring Kingdom composition. You have your 10 orcs as tacticians, you have your 10 avians as warriors, right? And so you kind of get a semi-uniform attack time with, you know, the avian doctrine and the orc doctrine stacking with the warrior and the tacticians. And so you have good attack time, you have good military strength, five fairies, mystics, rogues, heretics, whatever you want to do. But yeah, all right, there you go. I think the most fun one would be Impregnable, just because it's so silly. The what is it? 11 dryad necromancers, six fairy clerics. You know, that seems really fun. Um, and money bags also seems pretty neat. But yep, there you go. That'll be it for me today. Have a good age, everyone.